Okay, we're gonna get rolling here. My name is Liz Gray, and I am the Neighborhood Quality Consultant at Open Planning Development Corporation. I know you can't see me, but I'm in the corner of the room. You can move. I can hear all of you. Yeah. Oh, now you see me? Okay. Tonight we're going to be talking about a couple of things that involves the quality of life in Oakland and the city in general. One is rental registration. Two, we're also going to look at quality of life ticketing. Three, we want to hear about the changes going on at DPW, their new positions, and some changes with 311 now that they've moved to the mayor's office. So I am going to introduce our first speaker, and that is Rebecca Rinaldo. She is the Neighborhood Services Manager in the Office of the Mayor. Rebecca?
Thank you, Liz. Can you all hear me?
You're a little quiet.
Okay, I will. I'm in the city county building, and then I have to, and I thank you for letting me go first. I have to go to another meeting on the other side of town, so I appreciate you guys letting me bounce around town tonight. Can you hear me better now?
Much better, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so Liz asked me to come and just share any updates we are able to about rental registration. And I would love to share updates on 311 as well, if folks want to hear about that. I'll start with rental registration. Is this any better?
Much.
Oh,
much
good.
better.
Woo, okay. Sorry, everyone. I'm not sure what was happening. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what rental registration is, although judging from the audience, I think everyone is well aware what it is, and many of you have been advocating for it for the better part of a decade. This is an ordinance that was passed many years ago in the city of Pittsburgh, modeled after many other, municipalities and cities that are doing similar things to ensure that we have safe and quality rental housing for our residents. So it's a program that our Department of Permits, Licenses, and Inspections is, once the program is implemented, they will be responsible for administering it through required regular inspections of rental properties. Landlords are all required to register their properties. It just adds some accountability into bringing many of our structures in Pittsburgh up to codes and ensuring they're safe and healthy places to live for our residents. So unfortunately, the implementation of this program in Pittsburgh has gone through many iterations of legal battles because of a very active, group of realtors who don't want to have to deal with this type of accountability. So most recently in, early last year, Judge James issued a stay on the implementation because of the latest challenge brought forth by the realtors, and it's been a longer battle than any of us want it to be. This week is actually a significant week in that our Director of PLI, Permits, Licenses, and Inspections, as well as members of our law department, are in court with Judge James in the latest round of hearings on this. Unfortunately, we're not gonna, the way that the court systems work, we won't hear a decision on that for several more months. But I just want to assure you all, as and this is kind of near and dear to my heart as well, because I was once on the side. Oh, are you losing audio?
Yeah, your audio got real bad real fast there.
We lost your speaker. I think you might have disconnected your microphone.
I have not. I'm sitting in a completely quiet office by myself at my laptop. I don't have an extra microphone, like nothing is changing.
Okay, sorry. We can still hear you. You're just quieter.
Okay. Sorry. So I just really want assure you all that we are partners on this, and we are maybe not. I would argue that many of the folks in PLI are as frustrated that this hasn't been implemented as community members are. They want to get this thing going. They want to implement better, practices to protect renters in our city. And I want to assure you all that our law department and our solicitor herself are working very closely with Director Kinter to bring a full-throated legal, strategy to this battle, and that we remain confident that we are going to come out of this triumphant. So again, this is not what anyone wanted, but we are on the same side as you all, and I have full confidence that the law department under Krisha Kubiak's leadership is doing a great job fighting the legitimacy of this, and that ultimately we will prevail. So as soon as we know, you all will know, I'm sure, via either Councilman Krause's office or my team.
Rebecca, do you have any idea?
Your microphone is going to be catching this. If you want to sit here, you don't need to. You can even have your microphone.
So, are you just ask her mom what's that? Does she know what the cause is? The issue.
Rebecca, this was out to be for some clarity. Rebecca. This is coming to speak with the hour.
I'm speaking with the owl. Rebecca, I'm just curious as to what is the latest claim that the Landlords Association have that, what are they fighting against? It was about the fees. The fees have all been lowered. What is it now that they've got this little bee in their bonnet about?
So one of the sticking points, and let me preface this by saying, I think they're kind of going to just grab at everything they can grab at until there's nothing left, right? So I think one of the latest things is the lead safety ordinance piece. So the argument they are bringing is that what's called a material addition to the landlord or to the rental registry ordinance was added in November of 2021 regarding the requirement of a lead dust wipe test in all pre-1978 units.
Okay. So the landlords are saying that it is not within the city's jurisdiction to enforce EPA renovation, repair, and repainting standards. Their argument is, why is a municipality being given power to enforce something that should be done at the federal level? So that's one of the things that we are presenting on this week. Does that answer that question? I'm so sorry that we're having these tech issues.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions on rental registry?
Rebecca, how long, I'm not asking that question correctly. Is the hearing supposed to last all week? I know sometimes these things.
Yeah. Director Kinter said there were at least 3 days on her calendar that she,
Okay.
is participating in this.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So again, I think everyone in the room tonight is on the same side of this, and we're all just waiting for the battle to end. And again, we're confident that we think we have a well-designed program. Do you want me to? Are there any other questions or comments?
What's the fee per, is it a fee per unit or a fee per resident? That's the landlords are charged.
It's per unit.
I honestly don't remember where that landed. I don't know if Bob or the councilman, I would have to look that up.
Rebecca, that's changed so many times that even I've lost count of it. I think we could even be down as low as $5 per unit per year, if I'm remembering that correctly, and still they balk.
So is it,
Right.
if it's a single family house, it's $5, even though they have a bunch of kids living here, is that right?
Yeah, please don't quote me on that.
It's not based on the amount of people that are there. It's based on the unit. And it's also based on how many units the owner of the, you know, there's essentially a discount that is offered if you own over a certain amount of units. I don't remember what the number is, but I believe that we ended, it's very, very low. I think that at the lowest rate, you're paying, I think, $13 a unit. Don't quote me on that, but it's somewhere in that range. And the concern is that we need to make sure that that amount, that the city cannot make revenue on that. So this program will work on an unbelievable deficit for the first couple of years.
Are there other cities that have something like this that ours is modeled on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Many. The argument, which I don't believe is justified in any way, is that they want to stay our ability to come in and do inspection, because once we inspect, they'll be required to bring it up to code, and that's where the costs will come in. And so, as Rebecca said, they're throwing anything and everything at the wall in a desperate attempt to prevent us from entering, because they realize that inspection will require them to bring their properties up to code, which I think is just awful, that they would sacrifice the health and safety and well-being of their tenants at the, you know, for the sake of their revenues.
But are they arguing like because of something in Pennsylvania, or is it, you know, is it something else? Are they saying, is there something in Pennsylvania law that's preventing the city from doing what it wants to do? You know?
I don't think I'm qualified to answer that. I wish the solicitor were here. Bob, do you have a better answer for that than I do?
I would say the only thing that is unique to Pennsylvania is, you know, in our second-class city status, we are highly regulated in what ways we can generate revenue. And the associations that don't want this to pass have clinged onto that as an opportunity to come after a rental registry, with the belief that we would generate revenue. And that might be the only thing that's kind of unique to Pittsburgh and our second-class city. But I am looking it up here. I believe even Wilkinsburg has a rental registry. It's not an uncommon. Oh, sorry, Andrea, you put it.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just clarifying for Rebecca what the question had been that you were answering. You're doing great. Rebecca just asked the questions.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I mean, I would say that rental registry is not an uncommon practice in, you know, throughout the state and, you know, even throughout the county. So I think that's what I was in.
But Pittsburgh is the only second-class city, right? So I was wondering if there's something quirky in Pennsylvania law that's preventing us from implementing this thing.
The question is about, if I understand it correctly, is about whether or not Pittsburgh will be eligible to cover its costs here, because there's some dispute as to whether or not the city might not be profiting from the fee. So that was the original point of law that the judge was using to strike down the original legislation, saying that the fee being charged was in excess of what he believed that the program would actually cost. and therefore constituted an illegal revenue stream for the city. So the city, in response, reduced the fee per unit for the instructor for the inspections to a point where it is
Right, no,
now
I-
substantially below what the city itself expects it will actually cost to administer the program. And that was what Bob was saying earlier about,
I understand,
Okay.
but if Wilkinsburg can do it, right? Yeah. So what do they do? I mean, what do they do?
So the other point there, and I apologize, I realize, Rebecca, I'm kind of jumping in your part here, but the other
No,
reason why these landlords associations really want to come after Pittsburgh is because if they can make the rental registry fall in Pittsburgh, they can make it fall in other smaller boroughs. We are the shoot for the king, you best not miss kind of thing. We are the standard bearer that if they can find a way to prove this program unconstitutional here, they can take it throughout the rest of the region.
So they haven't been as aggressive in the smaller cities that have, like Wilkinsburg.
Yes, yeah.
Philadelphia, I assume, doesn't have that.
Yes, they do.
They do have it.
Philadelphia does, Allentown, Wilkinsburg, Keys Rocks, Erie, Pennsylvania, numerous.
There must be something quirky, because Pittsburgh is setting that. I mean,
Yeah.
there's got to be, I don't know.
I have a question that is not specifically about the legal framework here, but about the preparations the city might be making for the law's implementation. So our expectation is that with greater compliance from the inspections, we're going to see a reduction in the prevalence of overoccupancy. And that is, of course, a good thing, but is going to have a really dramatic impact on the entire economy of rental in Oakland. It's going to really affect the prices that are being charged, it's going to affect the property values, and it's going to have some not entirely knowable impact on the incentives that exist right now for landlords to invest in or keep up the properties beyond what's currently required and or the market.
I mean, it's pretty obvious what it's going to do. It's going to make it less profitable to be,
Right, so, given the complete endemic quality of overoccupancy here in Oakland, right? If we can expect that any given rental unit here is going to have the number of tenants that are occupying that unit reduced by at least 2/3, right? There's going to be an outwards pressure for that rental market, not just into the lesser dense areas of Oakland, but also into neighboring communities. And I'm curious to know what the city is anticipating will be the response or the public response. What kinds of policies or programs might people be contemplating to address the shift in the rental market?
It's a great question. I mean, it just, you guys know that, hopefully that affordable housing is a top priority for this administration. We have a plan to sort of phase increases into the budget for many of the programs and policies that already exist around affordable housing. I think without calling any one of those things out specifically, I think what you're saying just kind of reinforces the need and the urgency for all of us in this room to rally around. I say this at almost every community meeting I go to anymore. We all know landlords. We all have those relationships in our social circles with people who own properties. Encourage them to participate in voucher programs. Encourage them not to double and triple rent, get involved in advocating for denser housing where it's appropriate, and for more affordability and mixed income development where it's appropriate. But I will certainly raise the question and ask Director Kinter sort of what she's been thinking specifically around those impacts that you're describing, Andrea, and it's a great question.
And it's particularly because the strategies we have available for increasing the supply of market rate rental by new construction and increasing the supply of guaranteed affordable rental. Neither of those strategies addresses the student rental market because students are priced out of market and are ineligible to participate in the affordable program. So like building more affordable housing doesn't in any way affect the student rental market. It's basically, we're just increasing or dispersing rather the demand across the city without any kind of, there is no supply increase that you can work with there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's no market solution to students on fixed incomes. They have inelastic budgets.
Well, it puts pressure on the universities to build more student housing, right? That's a good thing.
They did decide to build a new gym instead of more housing, even though they over-admitted over, I don't know, 5,000 freshmen or something like that. And now they live in Carlo because they don't have housing, but they're like, oh, let's make one more gym instead of giving more housing opportunities, because there are none. And as a woman that lives in Oakland right now with 6 other roommates, because simply living on campus isn't affordable, nor anywhere else. The rental registration is a great thing, but it is going to negatively impact students in the future and where they're going to be to live and where they can afford to live. So.
I am having a hard time hearing everyone. So if there was a question in there, if someone wouldn't mind typing it,
I gotcha.
I'd be
I'm on. I guess I just want to reinforce for the city's sake that it's really important for there to be some reckoning of the impact of short-term student rental in the matrix or the calculus that goes into plotting future strategies for addressing affordability. It's missing from a lot of the Department of City Planning's, modeling of what the rental market looks like in Oakland or in the city. They don't think about student rental as being a significant part of the demand because individual students aren't living here for very long, and so they're not considered part of like a longer-term issue. But that disregards the fact that students X, that demand pot, if you will, is not ever going to go away. And in fact, actually, the number of such student demands, loci will only increase as the enrollment from the universities increases. So any individual student might not be registered, might not be living here for very long, but taken as a population, students aren't going anywhere and the numbers are increasing. And I'm not complaining about the enrollment. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with large universities, but I'm saying that the ability of the rental market to absorb that demand is finite, especially when we're talking about finally being able to enforce occupancy laws, which we have never been able to do here adequately. And I'm just begging you all at the city to contemplate that this is going to be dramatic in Oakland. And it has implications not just for affordability, not just for displacement, gentrification, but it threatens vibrancy, not just of Oakland, but of all of the surrounding communities. It puts stress on the transportation. It makes all of our lives a little bit more challenging in ways that I don't think everybody has quite contemplated. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I totally hear what you're saying, Andrea. I think it's an excellent point. I'll raise it to Director Kinter, see if she's already engaged in conversations with other folks in leadership about this issue. And I do think, just to my earlier point, I do think this issue does intersect with the need across the city to support affordable housing initiatives, because we know that students don't just live in Oakland, they don't just live in the South Side. It's like, as you push demands, it's going to presumably it could potentially take away from others, right? So I do think the two things are related, but I understand where you're coming from as well. Does that make sense?
Can I please add to that sentiment? I think Andrea makes a really good point about student housing not being taken into account when we assess when we determine what the demand is for affordable housing. But other than that, a lot of the affordable housing resources we have, students are ineligible for. Full-time students are ineligible for a lot of affordable housing. It's really designed not for students. And so, I think we really need the educational institutions to step up and to help be a part of solving this problem. We can't just rely on the city's affordable housing resources, which really are inadequate to meet the need of families who need affordable housing, to begin with.
Well, I can say from my seat, and I know that I shouldn't speak for the councilman's office, but I think we're all willing to place the calls and the emails into the university's offices to really encourage their strong partnership with all of us on these issues. Is there anything you guys want to add to that, Councilman or Bob?
Yeah, sure, I'll jump in if I may. I just think Andrea makes an excellent point. Understand the repercussions of decisions that we make, and the adage, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, and to understand the decisions that we make and the things that we implement will have repercussion, and to understand what those repercussions could be, and to work in preventative fashion to mitigate before they become problematic. So I think she makes an excellent point.
Rebecca, moving on here, can we get a refresh on what's occurring with the office of 311? I know it's moved to the mayor's office. That's about all of that.
Yes, I'm so glad you're asking me about this, because it's something I'm spending a lot of time on right now, something we're all really excited about. So essentially, the way I describe this to people is when we got in here last year and started, just kind of in the early learning months of being here, we realized that there were kind of like two different customer service call centers operating. One is the one that everyone knows about and thinks about as a customer service call center, which is 311. The other one is the front desk of the mayor's office, where one person sits. And we experienced a very high frequency of constituents who walk into this office in crisis at that location. So we have sort of reimagined the way we are staffing that front desk. We've put our MSW holding social worker at that location, and she is every day assisting folks who are about to be unhoused, or don't have food, or are in some awful custody battle and can't get an answer from the county or a court system or whatever. So because she is doing so much of that kind of really deep case management and real like social service delivery, and because she can only be on one call at a time, we were missing calls from folks, and the majority of the calls that come in at the front desk of the mayor's office are items that need to be submitted to 311 for proper routing through our departments for resolution. So we just found there was kind of a lot of waste and redundancy. And we also found that there wasn't a lot of integration between the reactive side of customer service and the proactive side. So the neighborhood services team, the folks, that you all imagine, kind of like myself, as like the boots on the ground people who are out at community meetings, attending events, doing walking tours with neighborhood groups like yourselves, really should be working hand in hand with the reactive side of our customer service team, which is 311. Another thing I learned is that 311 has been sort of shuffled around city government for all of its existence, and at times, have felt like the redheaded stepchild of city government. And so most recently, they were located in the Department of Innovation and Performance, which is effectively the city's IT department. So they do many other things, but that's essentially, kind of the bread and butter of what they do, is technology. So when I'm trying to like chase down issues that people threw in London, they say, oh, I didn't get a response on this, or, I submitted it this way, but I think I chose the wrong category. It was unclear. I didn't hear back. Like there were so many different things about the system that constituents didn't feel were necessarily serving them. I found myself in conversations with the director of INP, Heidi Norman, who is a tech and innovation specialist. And she said, Rebecca, I am not a community engagement professional. I am not a customer service professional. It would really make more sense for this group of people who are leading the frontline customer service work for the city to be housed under the leadership of people who, that's where their expertise lies. And so she worked very closely with our cabinet to kind of pitch this merge in our budget proposal to council, and we talked through it a lot with the public and with council, and thank you, Councilman Kraus and Bob, for passing it. So we have now consolidated the 311 team into the mayor's office. Mayor Gainey is very passionate about the city existing as his value of the city as a customer service operation. And he wants better visibility into how we are delivering customer service, not just on the proactive side, which is like traditionally how people think about mayor's office staff, but also on the responsive and reactive side. Part of that merger also involved the creation of a new position called a operations performance analyst. IMP collaborated with us on the job description for this role. This is someone who is going to own and be accountable for regular reports into the mayor's executive cabinet on the trends and gaps that we are seeing in our analysis of data that comes in through 311, with equity infused in that as well. So, okay, we have a ton of tickets in the South Side, and the top three things we're hearing from the South Side are, missed garbage pickup, unsafe sidewalks, and, weeds and debris. I'm just giving you examples. So we look at how those tickets are moving through DPW or PLI, or, how those routes are working, standardizing how the departments are closing the loop with the constituent and responding to them. But then on the equity side, looking at where we don't have data, neighborhoods that aren't submitting anything or are submitting very low amounts of tickets. And often this happens in our neighborhoods that are in the most amount of need, where they have lost so much hope that they don't even try to call us anymore. That data will feed into the proactive side of our team and tells us that we need to do door-to-door organizing in those neighborhoods. We need to get the word out about different city services and operations. We need to get them to come to a budget meeting to tell us their priorities for the next capital budget proposal. So that's, I could go on and on about this, but it's essentially streamlining, reducing internal waste, and trying to deliver better results for constituents on basic quality of life issues.
Rebecca, one of the issues that is not listed currently on 311 in the drop down is hoarding. Okay, we have an aging population in this. We have an aging population in the city, and we are seeing more incidents of seniors living on their own, and hoarding situations develop. Okay, the county about 3-4 years ago had a task force with hoarding. That has been disbanded. CHS is no longer involved in that. About the only asset we have left is Western Site, where they do have some, I would say, just guidance, but they don't really have a team to deal with this issue throughout the city. Is this something that the mayor will be addressing through the 311? You get it?
I've raised this as well. I'm not going to say it's something that we would address through 311, but it's something that Jessica, our social worker, can track. Like I said, a lot of the walk-ins that we get here in the mayor's office aren't really about things that are technically under the city's jurisdiction to deal with, right? A lot of them have to do with quality of life issues that are the responsibility of another agency, or in this scenario, perhaps not defined as the responsibility of anyone. And but she is capturing that data, and we certainly have a strong partnership with the county's Department of Human Services, our Office of Community Health and Safety works very closely with them, and I know they have raised this as well, that this is what we call a service gap. So I don't want to promise you that the city is going to take on hoarding as an issue, but we can certainly lead some discussions with our partners at the county.
Well, even if we could have the ability to enter that into 311 so that you are getting the data where the situations are occurring, and then it can be moved on to the appropriate agency. Because right now, there is no appropriate agency.
May I jump in quickly?
Yes, please.
Yeah, no, Rebecca, thank you, and Liz, thank you. We had a very similar situation years back in how it impacted the ability for public safety to respond in the event of an emergency, and so especially fire. And so as it relates to our ability to, God forbid, enter that property or service that property in the event of a public safety emergency, AKA a fire, God forbid, I think there's relevant argument to be made that there's a level of awareness we need to have. Having said that, at the same time, understanding and appreciating Rebecca's remarks that we do spend a lot of time fielding requests for assistance that really doesn't fall under the purview of city government. But I just wanted to caution, though, in the light of this argument, that as it relates to public safety, I do believe there's a level of awareness we need to have, that God forbid we need to intervene, that we have the ability to do so in the event of an emergency. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Dave Friedman asked a question in the chat. He said, you spoke a bit about the need to pair the reactive side of services with the proactive side of services. Can you speak a bit about how that approach will be applied with quality of life ticketing proposed in Bill 2022-0804? Dave, I don't actually feel comfortable speaking to that because this is legislation that is still pending, and you have kind of the lead champion for it on the legislative side of government here in the room. So I'd rather not offer comment on that at this early stage, but I'll defer to Councilman if he would like to.
Yeah, Rebecca, thank you. Liz, I don't want to overtake your meeting. I know that quality of life ticketing is on the agenda. If you're comfortable with moving into discussion of quality of life ticketing legislation, I'm happy to do so.
Yes, please.
Okay, good, thanks. Bob, can I bring you in? Because Bob largely has taken the initiative and crafted this legislation and understands it in detail. And I think he would be most effective in sharing what our hopes are to accomplish with this. So Bob, can I hand it off to you?
Yeah, that's fine. The only thing that I just want to make sure, I just want to be respectful of Rebecca's time. I think we'll probably end up talking a little bit on the quality of life legislation. Is that I know you have another meeting to get to, and this is not my meeting, but I do want to be respectful. If you need to run somewhere else, I don't want to start my thing before you're ready to finish yours.
No, I was only formally asked to speak about rental registry, so I feel like I've already exceeded my time in the spotlight tonight. So Liz, if you, as our convener, if you're good with kind of passing the torch to Bob at this point, I'm good.
I would love to pass the torch to Bob on quality line ticketing. I'd like to thank you, Rebecca, on rental registration. Please keep us posted on any updates. We would love to share that with the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I also noticed that Chris Mitchell is on here as well, which I think Chris is probably also here to talk about some public works things, but Chris really was a big help in designing this quality of life legislation that we crafted really all throughout the summer last year, but finally introduced in October. I have the legislation up. If you give me 1 second, I can put it into the chat so that everyone can see what I'm talking about here. Sorry, it's taking a little bit longer to do than I thought it would. There we go. All right. So quality of life legislation, the idea of this legislation, and actually very something I wanted to point this out. It's not a new idea to Pittsburgh. Well, it's a new idea to Pittsburgh, but it's not a new idea. It's something that a lot of other municipalities and boroughs have, very similar to rental registry. It's just not something that we've been able to implement here. Actually, the most recent one locally, the city of Washington and Washington County just passed a rental registry or quality of life ordinance maybe 2 weeks ago or something like that. The idea here is that, and really what the impetus that created this is, I spend a ton of time in our courts, and the system works well for a large number of people. It does not work well for a small section of people that are the worst offenders. The plan here was that we were going to create a new ordinance to focus in, starting very small on some very serious trash issues that we have, and try to find a new way to enforce our trash ordinances. So the quality of life ordinance actually does not create any new violations. The only thing that it changes is the enforcement mechanism that we go after the violations. So we've looked at other cities and what they do. Erie, for example, doesn't, they don't have a usual PLI system like we think of, where, you know, the inspectors go out 3 times and then it eventually ends up in front of a magistrate. all of their issues are quality of life, are looked at this quality of life mechanism to be enforced. Another way, we use the term quality of life, but another way to describe this is a nail and mail system. So right now, when an inspector comes out and they notice a violation, they see something's wrong, they come back in a month, or depending on the violation, either 2 weeks or a month, and see if it's wrong again. They come back a second time and then come back a third time. When they come back a third time, then it goes to the magistrate. When it goes to the magistrate, there's usually about 6 weeks before the case is scheduled. And in terms of trash, that means that your property or your neighbor's property could sit with piles of trash in it for an entire summer before you actually have a day in court or any sort of resolution. So the quality of life ordinance works much more similar to a parking ticket, where we notice a violation, we cite the violation on the spot, and if you believe that the violation was incorrect, very similar to a parking ticket where you believe that you received a ticket incorrectly, you can go and appeal your case in front of a magistrate. So we looked at starting with, if you go onto the legislation, if anyone is there, 619A.02, we looked at 4 very simple violations that we have. The first is accumulation of rubbish or garbage. The second is high weeds, grass, and plant growth, which we define as 10 inches of weeds. We looked at the storage containers for waste and trash, which is a huge problem. Liz knows a lot of the issues here are not just that people are throwing their trash on the side of the house. It's that the lid isn't on and rodents are getting into it, or the can is falling apart, something like that. So there's a citation there. And the other one is for early set out or late removal of those trash cans there. So there's 4 different violations that we looked at, all exist in code. Nothing is a new violation in that. The difference here is that we're looking at what actually would be a quality of life ticket. So we would both either, it's called nail and mail. So we'd either affix a citation to someone's door or their mailbox, and then we'd also mail it to the address on file to make sure that they were aware of this violation. If they wanted to appeal, they'd have the opportunity to. That's generally the concept of the ordinance. The other thing that I really wanted to talk about, though, that I think is important, is that we wanted to make sure that this wasn't something that was ultimately too punitive for folks that were actually having trouble with staying within, avoiding these violations. We know that is not the case for most people, and that our system actually works very well in those situations. But we made sure that if anyone who has applied for snow angels, city cuts, or has applied for the medical exemption for environmental services, where you call environmental services and say that you have trouble taking your can to the curb, and we'll actually have the environmental service workers come and do that for you. Anyone that's applied for any of those programs, regardless of whether you get in, that the point was not that, if we couldn't find you a snow angel, we don't want you to not have this waiver. But anyone that couldn't, that has made any sort of application for any of those programs, that they would be able to avoid these violations here. So we don't want it to be punitive for those populations there. And the purpose of this is really, we're looking at very small violations here. I believe that I have to look at this really quickly, but we said, yeah, $35 for the first violation was what we were looking at. So we're not looking to raise revenue for this. We're really looking at this to be an educational program where, we would be charging, or the fine would be $35. And hopefully at that point you would, learn your lesson, very similar to a parking ticket where you learn, hey, I really can't park there anymore because I have this fine. So the bill was proposed, or bill was introduced on October 4th. And we've had a couple critiques that we want to address and a couple tweaks that we want to make. We really want to make sure that we do this right and implement it correctly the first time, because we really think that this could be pretty transformative in all the city, but largely in Oakland, South Side, and some of our hilltop neighborhoods as well. So I am ready to take questions.
Bob, could you tell us who would be enforcing or actually issuing the citations? You or maybe Chris could answer that?
Yeah, so all of these citations would be enforced by environmental service workers. These 4 violations are all related to the environmental service workers. And I guess Chris could probably talk about this a little bit, but there's also one small shift is that environmental services is going to start enforcing the weeds, which they've never enforced before. That was something that PLI enforces, and they will be changing that shortly. I haven't talked to you about this in a little bit, Chris. Do you have any update on that?
Yeah, everything you said there was correct. We will be, out of environmental services, be the ones doing the quality of life ticketing with our new inspectors. We hired 2 in the last year. We have plans to ramp up as we go and absorb more responsibilities. The biggest problem, one of the many problems we had with trash and trash enforcement was kind of that all departments had some hand in it in some way or another. When it's just a Snickers wrapper, 1 inch to the left or 1 inch to the right, could go to different people. And we wanted to just kind of consolidate that, to not to mirror too much what Rebecca was saying earlier, but we just found a consolidation made a lot of sense. So as we gain more of these inspectors, will be gaining more of those responsibilities. Weeds and debris, we took on weeds simply because it just becomes entangled with debris almost every single time. So it's a single category in our 311 system, weeds and debris. So we weren't just going to take the trash, we're taking the debris or the weeds with it. There was a question that was asked earlier that I think it was really a good question, asking about the reactive and proactive sides and how that's going to affect quality of life. By Dave there asked. With environmental services, we have a little bit of a different operating procedure than PLI. PLI obviously has those long wait times, and we want to do a lot shorter, but also about 40% of the enforcement we do currently out of environmental services does not come from 311 or from constituents. It's things that our workers, our foremen, our drivers, our laborers are seeing out in the field and reporting back that generates that citation already. So what you're going to see with things like weeds and debris and a couple of these quality of life ticketing that are issues that were used to be done by different departments are going to have a proactive side to it now, because these inspectors, in top of responding to the 311s throughout the whole city, will also be doing field work themselves when they're not responding. They're going to be in Oakland, and they're going to be in Southside, in the 2 densest places that we can find a lot of violations very quickly just by driving around. So that will be a part of it, being proactive on these quality of life issues rather than reactive as we have been through 311.
And Dave, the other thing that I want to say, so we're not at the point where we're ready to implement this yet. But one of our other discussions that we had was perhaps running this program for a set time period and using kind of like an oops ticket. So we would leave some sort of note that would say, it would look kind of like a quality of life ticket, but it would say, just to let you know that you would have been fined $35 today if this program was in place. It will be in place on the 1st of the year. Whatever that might be. We haven't exactly ironed that part out, but we did think, we kind of all agreed that a warning period would be wise to start a program like this.
And that's something that 311 currently already does with a lot of trash violations. We have door hangers, we've got stickers, and that's largely used by our foremen. So we have precedent for that sort of action of leaving something that isn't necessarily punitive, but it's just a hey. And as we get closer to quality of life ticketing, our messaging on that would change, but our procedure would largely stay the same.
I guess, just if I could just have one follow-up to that, Chris, I appreciate your response to that. I think it's a little missed on what my question was. And I appreciate the point of that the frontline folks are proactive in the sense of they're looking around, but what I'm talking about is proactive in terms of the support for the person who's living in that house, right? I think it's safe to say, as a social worker who does work with a lot of those people who do get ticketed, that the trash on the outside is really the tip of the iceberg, right? That's what people see, right? They don't see what's going on beneath. So my question kind of goes to Rebecca's point about what does it look like to, whether it's with Lifespan or whether it's trying to team up with, your local CDC or, other social services providers to basically kind of make that referral, make that connection to say, you know what, we want to flag this. We also recognize that, a ticket, it can be a warning, but it's also not, I wouldn't call a ticket a life jacket. I wouldn't call it supportive to them. It doesn't give them, having a $35 ticket doesn't give them anything besides a slap on the wrist to not say, don't do this again, right? So my question is coming from the place of what does proactive and supportive look like when we react in this manner when it comes to quality of life, especially when it's the fact that we see the top of the iceberg, right? And there's few of us who are trusted enough by those people to see what's beneath the iceberg.
Can I comment on that just a little bit to ask for better clarity? Because Dave, that's exactly, I saw that coming from a mile away. That's exactly the issue that we're having here. That this is legislation that's intended to deal with a very specific problem, but because of the broad nature of its implementation, it's going to have some unintended consequences for the more vulnerable people that we're working with. So here in Oakland, for instance, we've got both kinds, right? We have negligent landlords who are not moved by, having a month and a half in which to pick up a particular piece of litter, that volunteers will sort of take care of sort of for them for free, We have landlords that are not moved by the existing enforcement mechanisms that are available, and who are really the ones who are creating the public health hazard by failing to adequately maintain the properties that they have for rent. That's a different phenomenon than somebody who is, for whatever set of reasons, incapable of adequately caring for themselves and the property that they own or they inhabit long-term. And I think that that's the concern. I don't mean to speak for you, Dave, but I'm trying to cast, there's two different sets of issues that we're talking about here. And this is kind of like a hammer where one set of problems is a nail and the other set of problems is an Allen wrench, that thing. It's not going to necessarily work the same for people presenting with similar kinds of violations. So I guess the question is there some mechanism that the city has available to distinguish between the property owners that are just straight up negligent versus the property owners that are incapable or struggling?
So, I mean, that's a fantastic point. The thing that I would think there, we haven't drawn that connection yet. we're not quite there with the program yet. But as the city is building up our co-responder model and really staffing up with the social workers that we have out of the Office of Community Health and Safety, this is an excellent point for finding, finding multiple avenues where we can get people the help that they need. And if it's so, it's not a great situation that we're finding that someone needs help through a ticket here. But if that's the situation that makes it so we actually get an opportunity to send a social worker out with the expanded Office of Community Health and Safety, this might be the opportunity that we actually have to get somebody the help that they need and figure out the whole spectrum of challenges that they might have that we can help with. It might not be the perfect solution, but I think of that as, as we're expanding our co-responders, that's another prime example of some situation that they need to be tapped into. So I'm happy to look at the connection between Public Works and OCHS in the future, especially when we get closer to implementing this.
Could I jump in just quickly? These are all valid points that are being put on the table for discussion. The number one call that we get in the office, bar none, regardless of neighborhood, is the mismanagement of waste, whatever that might look like, whether it is, daily trash, whether it's littering, whether it's overflowing garbage cans, whether it is abandoned vehicles, whether it's illegal dumping. I would argue that Bob and Joyce and staffers before probably spend at least 50% of the time spent in the office dealing with complaints around the mismanagement of waste. And that's really the intent of this ordinance. As Bob stressed, this is not intended to be punitive. It's really intended as a way to change behavior, to elevate quality of life for everyone that has ever had to live next door to a tenant who just simply can't seem to manage their waste in a productive way. I like how Bob responded that it can also create opportunity, that if we see that there are more serious issues taking place at that residence than simply their inability to manage their waste properly, then we can take that by case basis. And we can certainly work collectively with Rebecca, with the mayor's office, with the county, and multiple resources to make certain that if there is need there beyond simply an inability to manage their waste, that they can be connected with the services that they need. But I want to caution, that we don't, lose sight of really the simplicity of the ordinance and the requests that we get, simply inundated with, regardless of the neighborhood that we represent, is just, can we please insist on responsible management of waste, and can we find a better way to get results other than, as Bob explained at the beginning of his comments, in this never-ending cycle of trying to go through the magistrate and having an entire season or 2 seasons pass before it is brought back before a magistrate for any sense of relief. And the person calling us is living with that on a chronic day-by-day basis. Just wanted to throw that out there.
I just have a question. Who receives the citation if it's a rental property, say 2 units or 3 units in Oakland? The tenant puts the garbage out either too early or takes the cans back too late. Who receives the citation?
That's a great question. Mr. Murphy, is that correct?
Yes.
So that's a great question, Mr. Murphy. That is something that we have thought long and hard about. Right now in city code, it is the landlord's responsibility to inform their tenant of their responsibilities regarding trash. We know that, and it is city code that you have to have an addendum on your lease explaining the responsibilities of the tenant regarding trash to them from the landlord. It needs to be signed and initial.
Right.
We know that isn't always followed. So one of the things that this ordinance we actually talk about in the beginning of it is encouraging education around that. That right now, and the end result is that if you are the landlord and you come to the magistrate and you have the addendum on your lease that says, I've talked to my tenant about their responsibilities, they've signed it, initialed it, here is here it is, Your Honor, they can send that fine to the tenant. Right now, but if that doesn't exist, it is the landlord that will be paying the fine because it is the landlord's responsibility to make sure that the tenant is aware of their obligation regarding waste management.
Right. And if it's a 2-unit, how do they know who to cite?
If it's a 2-unit, I'm not sure. You mean like if both units put their trash out in the same location? Chris might be able to answer that a little bit better than I could. The logistics of
for citation, we have to, for coming out of environmental services, it's always going to the landlord because that's the name on file with the Allegheny Tax real estate portal, and that's what we use to determine who's where. I mean, we're a little out of date on that. But if it's a 2-unit, it's still going to be the same landlord, correct? Like it's still going to go to them. If there are issues where we run into where it's 2 units and it's owned by 2 different people and rented out by 2 different people, we'll have to work that out in real time. But it's not something that's currently going to be like built in, as far as I know.
Because the landlord might not know that they put the garbage out early or took it back. And so the landlord gets a citation and has really no control over that. Not like, I'm not talking about something that the landlord had time and should have removed. I'm talking about something really simple. And to give you an example, I believe it was 2 years ago, there was about 100 citations written on one day in Oakland. And it was right when a lot of students moved out and went home. So they put their garbage out, but they might have put it out right after, the date that it was due. So it was sitting out there, even though it was in cans. And I actually received, my students were home. They left. They went for the semester. They were gone for the summer. And someone put a box in front of my property and I received a citation for it. So I had to take off work and go to the magistrate who, fortunately, the city had pictures of it and could show it, but I had to take a day off work to do that. So I'm just saying there's a lot of mechanics. I understand the intent, and it's actually good because garbage is a huge problem, especially in Oakland. But hopefully there's no citations written on something that's really small, that's not really causing a problem, like a can not being put back in time or something really small.
Well, Mr. Murphy, so can I ask, do you have your tenants signed an addendum on their lease?
Yes.
Okay, well then, if that's the case, as long as you could show that to the magistrate, you would have, as long as your tenants know what the responsibility is, then you'd have nothing to worry about there.
Well, the thing is, so I would get fined, the tenants wouldn't, even though they signed it. Say there's 2 tenants in the building, how do you know which one didn't do what they were supposed to? And then plus I'd have to take a day off of work to go to the magistrate to be forgiven.
As a landlord, that's your responsibility. I mean, that's, when you decide to become a landlord, you take,
right.
You take that responsibility.
So
those of us who are residents, have to live with it. And, it destroys our quality of life. And, you know, as a landlord, you've got certain responsibilities.
So as a practical matter, then, if you rent just say a 2-unit in Oakland, I'd have to drive by the day after every garbage to make sure that it was taken out. That's kind of unrealistic.
Well,
That's
you know,
what- that's what
then
property
screen your
management does.
tenants, you know, screen your tenants, and if, you know, if they're violating, something you've agreed to in a lease, you kick them out.
Well, they kind and just to,
That's
and
that's
just a
even
quick-
more of a problem. That's
yeah, I was gonna say, and just in Mr. Murphy's defense a little bit. I mean, part of what he said too was, and this happens all over Oakland, and even and residents this happens to too. People will leave stuff in front of somebody else's address so that they don't get in trouble with it. But then you,
Correct.
that has nothing to do with whether you're a landlord or not.
No, that's true, but that, I mean, that's something that, you know, as a homeowner or whatever, you can dispute, but, you know, I don't see that as a problem.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's like, I once got a ticket, a parking ticket for a car that was fine, so, you know, I dealt with it.
And
right, but
Mr.
it could be, yes.
Chris Mitchell, if you can correct me if I'm wrong here, aren't all trash cans and recycling bins to be marked with the address?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, they
Well,
are.
that's the
Right.
rule in the city.
Well,
Okay.
right,
So if you have unit 1 and unit 2, you put the address, you put unit 1, unit 2.
Right.
DPW takes a picture of that trash can and it will say 1 or 2. Okay, that's that. But you have to understand, I spend a lot of my time walking around Oakland. I have seen parents with kids in pushchairs, strollers, having to go into the street because they can't go up the sidewalk because of the amount of trash and left trash cans that have been dumped on the sidewalk.
I'm totally aware of that. But again, back to David's comment on my comment. In my case, my students were gone and someone put a box from next door. I'll call it a bad landlord. And one of their tenants, they were loaded up in front of their house and they put it in front of my place and I had to take off work to go and I was exonerated at court. Fortunately, the city did take pictures, which proved that, you know, it wasn't mine. My cans, you could see them. They weren't even there. So I'm just saying that everything has a cause and effect. And, you know, not all landlords are bad. I actually was born and raised in Oakland, so I know I'm very familiar. I go through Oakland, I see the garbage, I see terrible instances of garbage, and I understand it's a total problem. I'm just bringing up a thing that can happen to quite a few small landlords.
But also
And,
that's
I-
protection documentation is very, very important. And that's why DPW does take pictures so that they can show, you know, what is happening, what they saw. And it's just not, you know, well, there was this box sitting on the sidewalk. As you said, you were, you know, when you went into court, that it was obvious, okay, apparently, that this was not your box, your trash bins were where they were supposed to be, and you were dismissed, correct?
That's right, but I had to take a day off work to do that. I was probably spent over 4 hours in court waiting.
One thing I want to bring up real quick is that's already our system. You know, quality of life does nothing but make that a little bit quicker for everybody involved. So where you had to, you got a fine, it was incorrect, you contested it, and everybody agreed on that. That's already what we're doing. We're hoping that with this consolidation of forces, with better systems that we're building up with this, and just that shortened timeline, it's going to waste a whole lot of people's time a whole lot less. You know, that's the biggest thing.
Right, I totally understand, and believe me, when there's a whole, I mean, when there's a lot of garbage, and you know, a lot of these students, and I'll blame the students because they're the ones living there. When they don't put their garbage in bags, they throw it on the. I mean, I think the environmental service workers are doing a tremendous job. You guys aren't paid enough to work in Oakland. Believe me, you guys do a tremendous job because there is just stuff thrown everywhere. It's really, really bad. Matter of fact, if I show an apartment to rent it, it's embarrassing that I have to show it to a student and their parents when you look next door and you see all the garbage laying there. So I definitely understand the problem. I'm just bringing up a point that could happen, something to maybe consider for maybe a small violation, the can not being put back or something like that. That's all.
Yeah, if I could just jump in momentarily, we get this argument often, and Bob will attest to the times that I will say that perfect is the enemy of the good, and that we strive to do good, and we will never do perfect, and there will always be some idiosyncrasy or some hiccup somewhere, but that we'll have to take by case basis. But if we don't take action, then we are just frozen. We're just paralyzed in our inability to take any kind of action, and that's where the system really begins to fall apart. So I just say that the attempt here is, again, as Bob stressed, not to be punitive. It really is to educate and change behavior, to turn a problem into something that's constructive and contributing. And there will be hiccups and there will be glitches, but we'll be able to deal with those on a case-by-case basis.
I understand. I have total respect for you, Councilman Kraus. But the only thing I could say, if I drove down the street in Oakland and I saw houses that just had tremendous amounts of garbage, not put in bags, thrown around and everything else, versus maybe somebody who, didn't take their garbage can back to where it was. To me, there's a common sense there that I would find the people that had the garbage laying all over, that put it out late and it sits out there for a week. And I would probably overlook the person whose empty can was maybe still out on the curb. That's all I'm saying.
No, I appreciate your comment, and trust Christopher to be able to manage the differentiation effectively. Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Murphy.
That sounds good.
Okay, everybody, we're hitting 7:28. If anybody else has any questions, please share them now. And if Chris and Bob and Bruce can put your contact information in the chat so people can contact you with further questions, that would be great.
Yeah.
Any questions?
No.
I did have one question. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yes.
Hi, how are you? It's Maria Lewis Bethel. So it's been a long time since I've met with you guys. Former disruptive property coordinator. How are you?
Oh, hi.
I missed you guys. And I see nothing has changed in 15 years with garbage. And so my question was actually, were any of these citations still being enforced under the disruptive property ordinance? Because it did include such citations for high grass, refuse, rubbish, those types of things. So if under that ordinance, if these tickets were being issued or citations were being issued, the property owner would be informed. They would have a chance to abate the citation by going to the tenant prior to getting to the point of a magistrate, if need be. And there were many times where the landlord rather, even though the ticket or citation was issued to them, they were able to then, they may have had to pay it, but they can then offset that cost by, like you said, giving that into the tenant. But the suggestion was to always make sure that is written in your lease, whatever that ordinance is, so that they have full knowledge of what that is.
Maria, thank you. I wrote that ordinance, I think my first or second year in office, with the help of Mr. Giampolo, who had come in raging about the condition of Oakland, and as he saw it, and armed with hundreds and hundreds of photographs he had taken over the years. But to answer your question directly, disruptive property, not to fault anyone, it kind of fell by the wayside for a period of time because the Disruptive Property Review Board, where one could go to petition or appeal being cited under that, fell apart. It was not constituted, and there was no avenue for recourse, and so therefore disruptive property wasn't being enforced. But under the new administration, Mayor Gainey has made that a priority, and working with council, we have reconstituted the Disruptive Properties Appeal Board. It is in place. And so there is avenue to petition if you feel you've been wrongly cited. And the Gainey administration is on the verge of actively enforcing disruptive properties again. I hope that helped.
Yes, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, we're hitting 7:30, so I'm going to call it a night. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I thank you for your patience with our technical challenges of the evening. There's always something, one thing or another. God bless our little owl. And next month, we have Let's Talk Again. I do not know what the topic is at this point, but you can check the OPDC Facebook page or the webpage or the Instagram feed, okay, on updates. And if anybody has any other questions for me, you can contact me via my phone at 412-335-0933 and lgray@opdc.org. And I love trash. I have 47,000 pictures of trash on my phone. Very sad.
Yeah.
So, good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you, Liz. Bye, everybody.